Hi everyone, Stepan here. Today I'm going to start with the first video of the Middlegame series, or the Middlegame Strategy series. And in the series I'm going to be targeting one of my biggest weaknesses, and that's attacking positions, sharp positions, complicated positions, in which tactics and calculation are all that matters ultimately, but you also need imagination in the attack. You need to know how to place your pieces, how to increase the pressure, when to sacrifice, when to start sort of waiting and play defensive moves. And during the series, I'm going to be covering some of the most beautiful and most complicated attacking games I know. If you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. I already have 20 or so in mind. So if I don't record yours, don't be offended, but I might if I like it a lot. Okay, so the goal is to analyze complex middle game positions in which one side is attacking, the other side is defending. Sometimes the attacker is going to be successful, sometimes vice versa. Now, if you know this game, I apologize for showing it first, but I don't think there's a better game when it comes to attack, and the more instructive one. I enjoyed it the first time I saw it. I enjoy it every time I see it afterwards. Okay, so it's a Sozin, a Rouser Sicilian, in which Tal has the white side against his coach Alexandra Koblents, and this is still a thematic position. We are still in theory just entering the middle game. So the usual move here, and it has about 10 or so games, is h5. The problem with h5 is that black can start counterplay of his own with b4, and of course the position should be about equal, but the point is black is given time. Instead of that, Tal chooses g6, which is also a good move. Again, the position should be about equal, and here we are starting the attack. Now, Koblents made a mistake immediately, which gave Tal an opportunity to attack along the h file. He took with the h-pawn, and this, I don't understand this decision, because it's clear that the h file is opening up now. So h7 is not going to be the only problem square. h8 is going to be a problem as well, as we are going to see. So same as in the endgame series, as soon as the situation on the board changes, try to figure out what's going on in the position and try to find the plan. So if you want, you can pause the video here already. Of course, it was correct to take with the f-pawn, and after h5, trying to open the position up, you take again, and after rook h5, you simply defend with knight f6. Once the rook moves, you can play g6. Now, this may seem unsafe, but your queen is defending along the 7th rank. Your rook can be defending via d7. The bishop could come to f8, defending the dark squares. The other bishop is coming to b7. The rook is coming to c8. You're going to play b4, and you have a lot of counterplay. I don't mean that I would rather have black. I mean that the position is equal and both sides have chances, although it's not going to end in a draw unless two engines are playing. Okay, after h6, the attack starts. Of course, h5, opening the position up. Now, you cannot advance with g5 because you just give up a pawn. You cannot allow me to take because e6 is going to be a weakness as well. Once I take and you recapture, and if you don't take, you get mated immediately, so you have to take. Rook takes h5, knight f6, this is all sort of normal. Now, here you have two options, and this is the point in the game at which I know I would be spending at least 10 minutes. And it may seem like a trivial decision, but it's actually not. How do you want to be attacking along the h file is the question. Do you want your queen in front? Do you want your rook in front? Both are fine options, actually. So either playing the rook to h3, which leaves the h2 square for the queen, or playing the rook to h1, which again leaves the h2 square for the queen, but has a queen in front. So which is more valuable? Since the knight is defending h7, I think I would do what Tal did and play rook h1. The engine, I think, says rook h3 is the best move, but by a narrow margin. And I mean, this is sort of an intuitive decision. I don't think there's a way to tell which is better. Once you see this game, you're going to think it's rook h1, but and I'm biased as well. But in any case, that's a decision you have to take during the game. So my advice to me, if I could remember it during the game, is to just make a decision quickly. I end up spending a lot of time on decisions like this and trying to calculate the position in advance, which isn't possible because I have no idea what black is going to be playing. Okay, rook h1. Now, rook h1, I think, is more precise from a human perspective for another reason. You're threatening queen h2 straight away. If you start your counterplay with b4, I can just play knight a4, and if you ignore me, let's say you go rook b8, I go queen h2. And after king f8, I'm coming in straight away, I'm winning a pawn, so you don't have time for that. So after rook h1, there's a threat. And already white is much better because the h file is open. But as we're going to see, Alexander Koblents wasn't an easy opponent to beat. Okay, so queen h2 is the threat. What do you do with black? I don't see many options. I only see d5, in fact, and he ended up playing it. The engine says d5 is a blunder and that the position should be plus 3.5. It says it's plus 2.6 after b4, just allowing what I showed you. I don't think any human would do that. I think d5 is a human move. Okay, now this is already white to play and win. Tal didn't see the opportunity to win immediately. Hopefully you can. Now you know the patterns. What you want to do is you want to mate him on h8. Black just played d5 to prevent queen h2. What can you do about it? Well, you have a few options. You have three options, actually. One of them doesn't work, and that's f4 because you allow knight g4. So there are two good options to calculate. Tal chose the wrong one, or the less good one. Okay, Tal played pawn to e5, which simply blocks the queen's defense of h2. The problem is that after knight e5 and queen h2, which he didn't play, the attack isn't as strong as it would be after the better move, which I'm going to show you just now. He didn't even play queen h2, he played bishop f4, and now black should have the advantage, and I'm going to show you why. The more precise way to play from this position wasn't e5, it was bishop f4. And this actually comes with tempo. Now you don't have any good options. If you play e5, I play queen h2, and you resign. It's as simple as that. You have to play king f8 here, and then my pieces are coming in. If you play the most obvious move, bishop to d6, then I take, I don't know, queen takes d6, and now f4. And now, what do you do now? If you play knight g4 here, then I can play e5, and your knight is never coming back, because e5 comes with tempo. And after bishop f4, if you try just moving your queen away, like queen b6, then I first throw in e5, you move your knight away, I play queen h2, you have to go f6 or f5, so let's say f6, queen h7 check, king f7, let's say bishop to d3, and this is just going to be overwhelming. After f5, something like queen h5, and the engine says plus 10. Sometimes it announces mate in some positions, but this should be just easily winning. Black's counterplay is nowhere to be seen. So after d5, bishop f4 would have been resigns almost immediately, because you basically are not stopping queen h2. But Tal played d5, which, okay, is also a good move, should still be much better for white, almost winning. Knight e5 only move. And now he blundered with bishop f4. Instead, as I said, queen h2, which just made sense, would have been a much better try. Of course, knight g6 is not possible. That's not the point, because the queen is hanging. The point is king f8, and you have to do this. If you try knight to d3, I can just take it. So that doesn't work. So after king f8, queen h8, knight g8 only move. Now bishop to d4 would have been a good attacking move. I know this is hard to see because of bishop f6, but you actually can continue bishop c5 check and bishop e7 and rook h7, and this should still be winning. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to understand after knight e5 that you don't play queen h2, because you played e5 to block the defense of h2. Okay, he played bishop f4, and now black has the advantage. Now the engine went from +3 to -2, and that's not as important. I just want to show that Tal's play wasn't perfect, and that sometimes his mistakes weren't well, at least to me, logical at all. I don't think I would ever play bishop f4 in this position. If I came up with either e5 or bishop f4 in the previous one. If you want to play queen h2, and you can play queen h2, you should play queen h2. Okay, so in any case, bishop d6 is a good move here. And queen h2 played now, king to f8, of course, now gives the king the e7 square. He doesn't have to play knight g8, queen h8 check. And in this position, black should actually be winning. White has nothing here. White is just a couple of pawns down for nothing, 2 pawns down. So if black plays king to e7, white has no good moves. You don't have queen g7 because I'm going to be playing rook to g8. So you have to play something like queen h4, and now simply bishop b7 and b4 is coming, rook c8 is coming, and game over. So after queen h8, this should be just winning for black. Unfortunately for Koblents, he blundered again. What I don't understand is, why would you play bishop to d6? Fine, you want to defend your knight, but why would you not see that bishop d6 gives your king the e7 square? That part I have a very hard time understanding. In this position he played knight g8, and that makes no sense. Your knight is worse, your king is worse. He probably didn't want to give up g7, but you have rook g8, you're 2 pawns up. Okay, now it shouldn't be completely winning for white from the engine's perspective, but from a human perspective, I don't think black can hold this unless he's Carlsen or Giri or one of the top guys. Tal played rook h7, which is just a good attacking move. f5, defending g7, probably had to be played. And now the series of most beautiful moves, probably any attacking game I ever saw. Tal's 2 next moves are incredible. Okay, so first he starts with bishop h6. Okay, the knight cannot take because it's pinned. The pawn cannot take because the queen is hanging. So what do? The threat is simply to play bishop takes g7 and mate. If you do nothing, well, firstly you have to defend with this rook, because if you defend with the a7 rook, then I win your queen, because after bishop g7 you have to play queen g7. If you do nothing, then it's mate, and that's it. You go king f7 or king e7 and I take here, and that's it. So after bishop h6 you have to play rook d7, that's forced. Now I would like to invite you to pause the video and try to find a good continuation. This next move is my favorite move of the game. Probably my favorite attacking move ever. Try to pause the video, try to find it. And this is about calculation. This isn't about thinking schematically. Now you simply have to brute force the variations and try to do that by figuring out how to include more pieces in the attack. That's a big hint, but still, try to include more pieces in the attack. All right, so Tal played bishop b5, and the idea isn't to play knight b5 and fork the queen and bishop and whatever. The idea is to clear the g1 square, or clear the way to the g1 square for your rook. Because if you can put another attacker on g7, then it's going to cave in. Also importantly, after rook to g1, you can never take my bishop on h6. When Koblents played rook d7, the threat of gh6 actually became real in the position, because your queen is no longer hanging. After bishop takes b5, you don't have time for gh6 because they take your rook. So you either have to move your rook or you have to take the bishop. You cannot take the bishop because if you take the bishop, I can just go rook g1 and that's it. I don't see a way to defend now. If you take the bishop, let's say first if you do nothing. If you do nothing, bishop b7, just bishop g7 is mate. King e8, queen g8, and so on. The next move is mate in 1. After rook g1, if you try to defend once more, like this, so you won my bishop, but I play knight b5, and again, you resign. Because once you move your queen away, you have to keep defending g7, I take on d6, you cannot take back, and if you take back again, I mate you on g7. If you try knight g4, giving back a piece by simply blocking the g file, then I first take knight b5. And after bishop f4, king b1, I don't know what to suggest. Let's say queen e5, just defending g7. Now I can just play bishop f4, queen f4, and fg4, and now you have no extra material and you're getting mated. There is one move that we have to calculate, which Tal would have had to see and calculate before playing bishop b5. So I'm going to set the position up here before bishop b5. Now that you know bishop b5 is an idea, try to calculate it, try to imagine that you saw it during a game, and try to find a possible refutation. The first move of the refutation after bishop b5, a b5, rook g1 is not that hard to see, I think. I'm sorry, after bishop takes b5, a takes b5, yeah, rook g1. No, after bishop takes b5, the next move is not hard to see. Try to find it, excuse me. Okay, so after bishop takes b5, there's a move we have to look at. A b5, as we said, doesn't work, but there's a move that could work if you don't see a very precise follow-up, which Tal, as I said, had to see. And that's knight g6, trapping the queen. White should be better, but this is extremely hard to calculate, or at least it was for me. When I was analyzing the game by myself, I looked at bishop b5. I actually did, with the idea of rook g1, but as soon as I saw knight g6, I just discarded it immediately. And I shouldn't have. The idea is knight d4, and again, this isn't easy to see for me, even though it's pretty obvious that you're threatening knight takes e6. I just didn't see it. And the point is, after knight takes queen, knight takes pawn, king f7, for example, knight takes c7, rook takes c7, you can now play rook g7 check, and after king f8 you can play rook c7 check. And the engine says this is about equal. If I tried to visualize this during the game, I don't think I would be able to do it correctly. I would misplace at least one piece. So again, after knight g6, knight d4, simply counter-attacking. And if you move your queen, I'm going to take with check anyway, and then it doesn't work. So after bishop takes b5, Koblents had to see that knight g6 is bad, otherwise he'd have played it, because knight g6 is an obvious move. In the game, he just moved his rook away with rook f7, and now Tal gets to play rook g1. Again, you don't have time for pawn takes bishop, because you get mated. So he played rook a7, and now the madness continues. There was a move here for Tal which he didn't play, and then this is an engine move. I mean, this I didn't even consider during my own analysis, and that's bishop to e8. If Tal didn't consider it, then I'm not feeling too bad. So you're attacking the rook. The idea is not to take the rook, it's to undefend g7. So if, for example, rook f6, black resigns. If king e8, then queen g8. So the only move probably is rook e7. Or excuse me, if king e8, I don't think you even take on g8. I think it's more precise to take on g7 because the king undefended the g7 square, and after rook g7, and then it's going to be mate. So after bishop e7, after bishop e8, rook e7, now the follow-up is bishop to h5. And the idea is extremely simple. Again, you cannot take on h6 because I mate you on g8. So the idea is bishop g5, just winning the rook or the exchange. So, for example, rook b7, bishop g5. Let's say d4, bishop e7, queen e7, and now just knight e2. And this line, I mean, that's very hard to see. Instead of bishop e8, Tal continued with a human move, knight to d4, bringing another piece into play. Not worried about AB, of course, because either knight takes removes one of the defenders of g7, which still works. And now Koblents found a really nice move. Let's look at some human alternatives and try to refute them. Of course, knight d4 also threatens knight e6 check. That much is clear. So if you move the queen away, for example, queen e7, then again bishop e8, now it's not hard to see that you win the exchange, because against queen e8 you play bishop g7, against king e8 you play rook g7, against rook f6 you play bishop g7. That much is clear. So against queen e7 the refutation is easy to spot. Against queen to d8, yeah, against queen to d8 you can just play. I don't think you even. Okay, the bishop defends still. Yeah, okay, queen d8 just fails to bishop g7 again. We've undefended the square. So Koblents found the only move to stay in the game. He played knight to g4. Now you should remember that even though white isn't a piece down, he could be after ab5. And if there aren't enough pieces to put pressure on e6 and b5 and g7, then this knight sacrifice could be really good. Now, of course, this also, or most importantly, this blocks the rook. And there's no more pressure on g7, which means that g takes h6 could actually be a threat, followed by a takes b5. So, fg4 played by Tal. Fine. Bishop e5, which is a very nice follow-up to knight g4. The idea, of course, was also to defend the g7 square with the bishop. So now, there could also be ideas of g takes h6 in some positions. Not yet, of course, because you can take on f7 with check and then take the bishop. In this position, Tal probably should have played knight f3, and this is a move I was looking at as my main candidate. I don't understand why he didn't play knight f3. The reason must have been bishop f6, but now I think... Yeah, okay, it's actually very hard to find the follow-up. Now, the one idea I had, which I didn't check with the engine, is moving the bishop away somewhere, for example, to d2 to just defend c3, and then trying to threaten rook h1 and queen g8. How slow is that, or fast, I don't know. Instead, he played knight c6, putting pressure on the rook, which is understandable. In the game, bishop takes c3 was played. And now, well, this is my second favorite move of the game. If bc3, which wasn't played, that's perfectly fine, white is winning, then ab5 and gf5, opening up the rook once again. Again, you cannot take the knight. Let's say, I don't know, ef5. Then we can just take on g7. And after rook g7, you take on a7. And the rook is pinned. So the engine announces mate here. It's not easy to calculate this. You can pause the video and calculate the mate in 11 if you want. We're going to move on. Okay, after bishop c3, Tal played a wonderful move. He played bishop e3. Now, what's the idea behind bishop e3? It's not to put pressure on a7, even though that's a nice side effect of the move. It's to play bishop c5, check. So if you, I don't know, let's play a stupid move, rook d7. Then bishop c5, and you're forced to play rook back to e7. Otherwise, if king f7, queen takes, or rook takes. If king e8, then queen takes. So bishop c5 is the big threat. So bishop e3 is in an amazing Zwischenzug. And after d4, which blocks bishop c5, threatens this bishop, in some positions threatens bishop to b2 check, he plays rook h1. And to come up with bishop e3, forcing d4, and then playing rook h1 is just astonishing. The threat is obvious. It's queen takes g8 and rook h8 mate. Of course, the king cannot go to e7, so it's actually mate. You cannot just give up a knight. So you have to defend against that. You cannot take this bishop, you cannot take this bishop. If you take on b2, it doesn't change things much. So you need to give your king a square, because queen g8 is a threat. So he played rook d7, fine. And in this position, Tal blundered into a draw. Now, seeing that, for me, it's impossible. I just, when I was analyzing the position, I thought he was winning the whole time. You can pause the video and try to continue from here. By the way, the position before Tal's next move is +10. After his next move, it's 0, 0, 0, 0. So be careful. Okay. First, let's look at the correct continuation, or the most precise continuation. Let's see. Okay, there's actually only one winning move here, and that's hard to spot. And that's g takes f. Now, let's assume d3 is played, because that seems sensible. There are other options, but it would take me hours to show you everything in this game. You play f e6, and now you cannot move your rook. And again, I will be threatening queen takes g8 at some point. So after a b5, I just play queen g8 mate. I don't know what else to suggest. Let's see what the engine says. The engine says g6. Queen c3 is the best move. I would play e7 check. I don't see what's wrong with e7. And if bishop takes queen, I can just do this. Okay, so probably there are a million moves after g6. e7 has to be winning. Yeah, e7 is +7. You cannot take it. If you play king e, you have to take it. If you play king e8, it's actually mate in 1. Okay, in any case. In this position, taking the pawn was just winning, because you're threatening to take again, and you're threatening to basically play e7. Now, if this pawn is taken, then this is mate. And that's not easy to see, once again, but it's not that hard to see either. You can just continue giving up your pieces. Just a second. So, what you have to do with g takes f5 is understand that you want to open up your bishop, that you want to threaten queen g8, and that you also want to threaten f e6, which is why gf5 is the best move and the only winning move. That's not easy to see by any means, and for me it's impossible to see. That's why I'm looking at games like this. Tal played bishop to g5, and it's all zeros now. It should be a complete draw with nothing to do for either side. And the drawing continuation isn't that hard to see. When I realized it was a draw, when I looked at the engine, I turned the engine off and tried to find the draw. This is a good exercise in calculation. If I told you black to play and draw, and I can flip the board for you, you can try to find it. Yeah, so pause the video. Okay, let me flip the board back. So the draw is pretty forced. Bishop takes, okay, king takes, and now a b5. If after bishop takes you play king b1, let me just double check if you're losing or not. Some positions are lost, some are not. This one should still be a draw, although black is better after d3. I thought a b5, but a b5 is a draw. Okay, I'm not going to spoil it. So let's assume bishop takes, king takes. And now a b5, you have a couple of options. You can play gf, or you can play knight a7. If gf, then queen takes c6. And if rook takes g7, then queen c3 and black wins. Black is going to be mating white. So let's assume knight a7. And now queen c3 check, king b1, and I can just do this and check you. So let's say queen b4 check, king a1, queen c3 check. Let's go to the other side, king b1, queen b4 check, king c1, queen a3. If you start going to d1, then you lose, because I play queen f3. And after king to c1, I can either repeat or I can play d3 at some point. And this is scary. For example, queen a3, king d1, d3. And I think black should be winning. The engine says -3. I think it's winning enough. So yeah, after bishop takes b2, you need to allow this repetition and just play for a draw. After bishop g5, though, Koblents played a b5, which should still be okay. That should still be a draw. You still have a chance for bishop b2 and so on. Tal played rook to h6. Now this move, even though it seems amazing, the game is not winning anymore, and this move is not as great, I want to say, as bishop b5. The idea is both rook takes e6, but more importantly rook to f6, where after g takes f6 you have bishop h7, bishop h6 mating. In the game, Koblents played his final blunder. There were two moves with which he could have drawn the game. The first one is the simplest one, bishop takes b2. And now, again, you can take. I'm not sure if black wins if you take. It should still be a draw, the same variation that we saw before. But let's assume king b1 this time, and then again queen takes c6. If you play rook f6 check, g takes f6, bishop h6, rook g7, everything is defended sufficiently. Bishop takes g7, I go king e7, and I start running bishop f6 check, king to d6, bishop e5 check, king to d5. You can take on a7, and should be equal. Again, either side could win, and it's very sharp and complicated. It's two pieces for a rook, but it should be equal. This is impossible to see during the game, especially after 30 moves we just saw. So a more human way to draw, I think, is queen takes c6. This seems sensible. Now if you play rook f6 check, then gf6, bishop h6, we have the same variation, rook g7, bishop g7, king e7, bishop f6 here, bishop e5, king d5, and again rook a7. And now we can transpose with bishop to b2, but there are no other options. Basically, we want to play for a draw. So bishop b2 seems pretty forced. Both should lead to the same position, but I think queen c6 is better. Okay. In the game, Koblents, of course, didn't want to allow rook f6 check, so he tried d3, although I don't know how that prevents rook f6 check. Tal just threw in bc3. And now it's very simple. There are no perpetual checks. There are no tricks. After bc3, it's over. He tried d2, but king d1. Now he took on c6, but now it's not the same story. After rook f6, there is no bishop. Okay? And my king isn't getting perpetually checked. If you play gf6 now, then bishop h6, rook to g7, bishop g7, king e7, bishop f6, king to d6, bishop to e5, king to d5, rook takes a7. Now I just have a much safer position. This should be. I don't know how black can defend. I have a couple of threats while you have none. The first of my many threats is bishop to d4. The second one is queen takes, and then I'll try to mate you with queen and rook. I think bishop d4 is the most precise. So yeah. So after rook f6, he didn't even take it. He played rook f7. And now if you want, you can find the final move of the game yourself. This one isn't easy. This one isn't hard to see. Tal played queen takes g7 check, and Koblents resigned. The rook is pinned. All the pieces are falling off. Black is getting mated. This game isn't hard to show, it isn't easy to show, and isn't easy to understand. I still don't understand a lot of it. I would still like to go through it a couple of more times. I didn't want to make a 2-hour video on it because I thought it would be boring. So I would invite you to have a look at the game yourself once again and try to look at it over the board. Try to find resources I'd missed. Okay. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked the game and the video. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.